All right. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Annette Thompson, part of the Marketing and Creative Services team here at GW. And this afternoon, I'll be joined by Shay Bartlett and Dan Lomask from our MCS team to go over topics related to the accessibility of social media content. As we go through the presentation today, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You can also take yourself off mute and just go ahead and feel free to speak up. We can keep this pretty casual. First off, I'm going to start by giving, we'll be covering just accessibility generally and what that covers, what the common issues are on social media, and then we'll look at each platform individually and get into some more detail. For those of you who have not been exposed to the concept of digital accessibility yet, if this is still pretty new, when we talk about this, we're referring to the idea that our content online is accessible no matter what device a person is using, regardless of their physical capabilities or limitations. And some examples include, you can see here on the screen, first, a screen reader is software that somebody who is low vision or blind might use to read a website aloud to them. Somebody who might not be able to use a mouse because they have some permanent disability, or perhaps, somebody on our team broke their hand recently, that type of thing might limit your ability to use a mouse temporarily. Somebody who's unable to see a screen. Again, this could be a web page. It could also be something like a video. So making sure that somebody who can't see the screen knows what's happening in a video. And then also taking into account low bandwidth. And many of the accessibility best practices also improve the experience for somebody on a low bandwidth connection. The standards for digital accessibility are set by an organization called the World Wide Web Consortium, called the W3C. And the acronym for these standards is the WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. You'll hear us refer to these in trainings, and just if we're chatting about it in office hours, you might hear us refer to the WCAG guidelines. Those come in 3 different levels, A, AA, and AAA, from the most basic level of accessibility compliance to some of the stricter standards that greatly improve how somebody with a disability can use our website, our digital presence. Here at the university, we're striving for WCAG 2.1 AA. That's the latest version of the WCAG. And if you haven't already visited our site, accessibility.gwu.edu, that is where you can find more information about these standards and best practices, not only for social media, but also for other aspects of your online presence. And when we talk about your online presence as a whole in the context of accessibility, it really touches just about everything. Anything that is produced by or consumed by an electronic device. So that's websites, your formal department website, as well as any blogs that might be associated with your department, any applications, desktop, web-based, or mobile applications, social media content, which we'll be talking about more today. Digital signage falls into digital accessibility. Downloads like PDFs and flyers, and online video. So pretty much everything. From our perspective here on the central team, we are trying to make sure that everybody at GW knows about these standards and is fully equipped to make sure that their properties are up to date. This is a priority for us this year, going into the academic year, so you will be hearing lots more about it, and we'll be sharing details about all of these different things. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shay Bartlett, who will kick us off talking about the most common issues on social media.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing great. Shay here. So what are the most common accessibility issues on social media? So think about it. Social media is very image-based, so every image needs an alt-text description. Videos need captions. Text needs a lot of color contrast with its background. That's something you don't think about as often, but it's still important. And images shouldn't use color alone to convey information. because that also ties back to issues with vision impairment and sometimes screen reader problems. So let's begin with social media platforms. I'm going to talk to you about Instagram. Instagram, by the way, is currently Gen Z's favorite platform, and that is what our incoming students and many of our current students are using. So Instagram's a very important platform if you're wanting to connect with our current student and future student population. So when it comes to accessibility, how do you add alt text to images? So you upload your post for your Instagram feed like normal, and once it's posted, you will go click edit the image, and the image will pop up in the right-hand corner. There'll be edit alt text. So you click on that, and then you type in your alt text. Pictured example is one of our most viewed images of Gelman Library, where we used the alt text, which was pretty thorough, to say empty tables and chairs on the 6th floor lounge of the Gelman Library. Thorough alt text is great because it lets everything and lets people know what exactly they're looking at, rather than just like chairs. Like throw some context in there if you're doing alt text. Best practices for the Instagram feed as well. Avoid feed posts with heavy text, and that's what I'm talking about, like flyers or graphics that have a lot of text on them. These are incredibly inaccessible because you can't screen read the text on a graphic. But also, even if you're adding alt text, my guess it's going to be really hard to convey literally everything in your flyer. Flyers aren't made for, Instagram wasn't made for flyers. Instagram was made for like visually appealing pictures. And while I'm sure the flyer is very pretty, it's not the aesthetic people go to for Instagram. And also, if you're posting a video into your feed, make sure captions are already in the file you're posting if there's someone talking or music is playing. Unlike other platforms with Instagram, you cannot add them after you post. So that's something to remember. Shifting from Instagram, we're going to talk about Instagram stories. One of the most important parts of Instagram stories is paying attention to color contrast. If you go to the accessibility website we have, we actually have a page showing the color contrast of text in Instagram stories. And that'll show you like all colors, and it'll tell you does white text work or black text work. We actually used this page today when we were doing a Q&A for move-in to ensure that we were making sure color contrast. So got to say, it's super helpful. So just pay attention to that if you're doing a background on the text, which you almost always need to do for an Instagram story. Another thing of note for Instagram stories, add captions or highlights to clips. We haven't used it ourselves, but there are apps like Clipomatic that can caption stories prior to posting. Representative Ocasio-Cortez actually popularized this app when she was doing some of her own live streams and captioning what she was talking about in order to be more accessible. If you can't do that, at least make sure you have a full quote of what the person is saying. Not only for accessibility, but more and more people are not listening when they're watching stories. They're in public, they're on public transportation, they're in restaurants. So even as a best practice as a whole, make sure you're typing out what they're saying as well. And I'm passing it over to Dan Lomas to talk about Twitter.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Lomas, content strategist in Marketing Creative Services. So a lot of the stuff that Shay talked about on Instagram is going to be relevant for Twitter as well. You're just going to add the alt text, in kind of different places. So on Twitter, the first thing you have to do is enable the alt text setting. So if you go into your profile settings and down towards the bottom, click on accessibility, you'll have this checkbox that says compose image descriptions. Make sure that's checked, and then you'll be able to add the alt text to all your tweets. So when you upload an image, Once you've done that, you'll see the Add Description button under the image. You click on that, and that will open up the alt text field for you. When you're adding alt text, as Shay mentioned, you want to be descriptive of the image. Basically, anything that is communicated by the image should be in the alt text. So if you have any words or information on your image, which is more common on Twitter, make sure that all the text that's in the image is also in the alt text as well. You can add captions to your videos in Twitter, unlike on Instagram. To do that, you have to use what's called Twitter Media Studio. We have the URL to that right here. It's studio.twitter.com. Basically, just upload your video here. You have the Upload Media button in the top right. And then you upload your caption file, which is a .srt file. We'll talk a little bit more later on about how you get that caption file. You upload the file to the video in Media Studio, and you can tweet the whole package, video plus captions, right from there. What about the memes? What about these little character drawings that are everywhere? These are not very accessible. Screen readers can't interpret it. It actually reads all the characters individually, and the text is out of order. In this example, the text is separated by the spaces and the vertical lines. The screen reader can't interpret it like your eyes can. So our recommendation is to avoid these formats. If there's another way you can post it, if you can make the joke in another way, try to do that. Don't use these formats for critical information, information that your students depend on. We should not be using these inaccessible formats for that. So no safety and security information, deadlines, financial aid, stuff like that. If you are going to use these formats, we have a couple ways to make it more accessible, but they're not, they're not perfect either of these methods. You could take like a screenshot of this before you post and post it as an image, and then you can use alt text to add the message in the image description so the screen reader can read it. That's not perfect because that's not how people are using the memes on Twitter. It's a little out of the ordinary for the platform, even though it would be accessible. The other method is to add a reply to the text with some alt text. So if you've seen, here's an example. Monterey Bay Aquarium does this a lot, where they will post a meme and then follow that up with a reply in plain text, just kind of explaining the joke for the screen reader. Again, this is not a perfect solution either because it's not really a widespread practice. Do users who need that read to them know that it's going to be there? Do they expect that information? Do they know they have to open up the replies? Unclear. So we're just going to fall back on these recommendations. Avoid it if you can, but if you can't, try to make it as accessible as possible. Okay, going to move on to Facebook. When we're talking about alt text, Facebook will kind of generate its own alt text from your images, but often you'll want to edit this because it's not going to be complete. It'll say like, image may contain a person and a tree and the sky, and it's not very descriptive. So after you post an image, if you click into it, in the bottom right corner, you'll see the options link. Click on that, and you'll have an option to change the alt text, where you can replace Facebook's auto-generated alt text with something more descriptive. So again, the same kind of standards we're using on Instagram and Twitter apply to Facebook. You want to be descriptive of your image, and if there's any text or information contained in the image, make sure it's contained in the alt text as well. When you post a video, Facebook can also generate a caption file for you. This is going to similarly have a bunch of errors, so make sure you go through and proofread it and fix everything up. That feature is good for like a short video clip. If you have something longer, it's often easier to just write your own captions, and Facebook gives you a way to do that. After you posted the video, in your video settings on the right-hand side, you can add your own captions there. To create a caption file, we use a service called Revcom, which costs $1 per minute, and they do all the proofreading and accuracy checks ahead of time. So it's especially for longer videos, it's a real good service to use. All they need to work is a link to the video in YouTube or Vimeo. So you send a video off to Rev, and they send you that SRT file, which you can then upload to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Vimeo, but not Instagram, as Shay mentioned. Facebook Live is a totally different venue. We have worked with this company that provides live captioning, but it's a little bit more expensive and it's a more complicated process. So if you're doing a live video, you're live streaming an event, we recommend you contact us ahead of time. We'll work with you to get that set up. The company we use is called AI Live. Typically, they need 1 or 2 days notice. We send them a file with like any names or jargon or acronyms, stuff like that, that's going to come up in the event. And it generally costs between $200 and $500 per event. So reach out to us if you're interested in this service. Okay, similar to Facebook, YouTube can also auto-generate captions. Like Facebook, these can be inaccurate and you should proofread them and make edits in their tool. If you're using a better alternative is to just use the caption service like Rev. They'll give you the file that's ready to upload without errors. So you get the SRT file, you go to your file in YouTube, click on Edit Video, select Details, click Advance, and you'll have this upload screen for your subtitles right there. Vimeo, it's going to be the same story. Once you have that SRT file from Rev, you click on the video, click on Distribution on the left side of your settings, then Subtitles down below, and upload your SRT file right there. So that was an overview of the different platforms and how to get alt text and captions on your media there. To open it up to questions now if you have any.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Annette asking Dan a question. For Instagram, if you do have a graphic with text, what about repeating that text in the description versus trying to cram it all into alt text?
I mean, that's probably fair too as well. Like if we're getting it out there, I'm less sure about like what to do with the screen reader, but as long as we're making sure like the text is repeatable and like it's all covered.
I think with Instagram, if you don't put in alt text on the image the way Shay pointed out earlier, that Instagram will take your image caption and use that as alt text, which most of the time is not, your caption is different from the description of the image, so that most of the time that's not really useful. But if it's, I think that would work if you have a flyer and you put all the text from the flyer in the image description. I think it would.
Before we could manipulate alt text, we would actually put in our text like in brackets image description and then just like a description of what the image was saying. So that was definitely something we did in the past.
So we have another question here. Is there anywhere we can get more information on alt text? Are there examples anywhere? Yep. So do we have a alt text?
We have on the accessibility site.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Annette. On the accessibility website, we have more information on alt text and examples there. We also...
Sorry, Dan, this is Natasha. I was just going to point out that we've hosted a previous training on alt text as well, and we can send a link to that recording with the follow-up materials.
Great. Thanks, Natasha. Are there any other questions? Okay. We have a question here. I work with a lot of faculty and event coordinators at GW who do not think about accessibility until it is too late. I was wondering if you have any training that you could provide in the future.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in many ways we're all kind of learning this together, and we are trying to socialize this idea more and more, weave it into all of the trainings that we do. So I think that when it comes to event planning, particularly if there's going to be video, factoring in the extra time to coordinate the live captioning, that's a big piece of it. As far as thinking about, your marketing plan and any graphics that might be produced for social before or after the event, making sure that those have been prepped and alt text has been written so you're not trying to think it up like right at the last minute. Happy to help, if you have any specific questions, and then that's a good idea. Maybe we can put together some resources like a little one-pager for event planning and checking the boxes for accessibility. So thanks for that comment suggestion.
Another question, will you be sending the recording and slides to us?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we'll be sharing the recording and the slides and a couple other links to relevant resources, definitely.
Third question, do PDFs and other documents uploaded or linked to on social media have to be accessible? And do you have any information on how to make those accessible?
Yes, yes, and yes. If we are linking out to any, a PDF, some sort of other document, it should be accessible. That's the expectation. For PDFs specifically, there are tools within the Adobe Acrobat software that we all have access to through Adobe Creative Cloud. There's a built-in accessibility checker that will scan and tag your document and guide you through making sure that all the images are tagged and everything. So that would be my first recommendation. And then this is exactly the kind of thing we can help out with at office hours. We will include the information about office hours in the follow-up email. But we're available both in person and virtually on a daily basis or on a regular basis. So if anyone has PDF-specific questions, we are happy to walk you through that. The accessibility site also links out to some external resources, training resources related to PDF. All right, is that it?
Yeah, are there any other questions out there? How does GW go about checking accessibility when it comes to websites and materials produced by different departments? If we notice a website is not accessible, is there a specific individual we should contact?
We have a tool called Site Improve. If you're not familiar with that, we can include a link in the follow-up email. It's a website quality assurance tool that crawls your website every 5 days and looks for things like broken links and misspellings, as well as flagging accessibility issues. So that's the #1 tool that we use here centrally in our department to keep an eye on what's happening across all the websites. And then anybody at GW who manages a website can get a Site Improve account. So you can keep an eye on your own site and the status of it. The second part was, is there, if you notice that something is not accessible, depending on what it is, most of the GW websites have contact info on them, generally in the footer. So you could reach out to the department directly, or you could always refer something to our team, to our attention, and then we can take point on reaching out to them and guiding them to correct their issue.
I'll add for social media, I don't know of any tools like SiteImprove for social media where we can monitor like all our accounts at once. So it's going to be more of like a spot checking on social media. But you can definitely contact us in Marketing and Creative Services if you notice anything.
Any other final questions?
All right. Well, thank you all for your time this afternoon. We'll send out the follow-up resources, and feel free to reach out at office hours or via email if you have any questions about this or anything else related to accessibility or your website in general. All right. Have a good afternoon. Bye.